If you ever hear something crawling through your walls at night, don't convince yourself it's the house settling, because one night, it won't settle. Elias had always been a little too comfortable with silence. At 23, after saving up from night shifts at the dockyard, he finally moved out of his childhood home. Not into a shiny city high-rise, not a trendy flat, but into the bottom unit of a weather-worn Victorian triplex on the edge of Portland, the kind of place with old water stains in the ceiling, cracked crown molding, and vents that looked like they hadn't blown warm air since the Reagan administration. But it was cheap, no roommates, no landlord breathing down his neck, just him and the creaks. The first time he noticed it, it was subtle. A dragging sound behind the wall, thin, metallic, like someone dragging their nails across sheet metal. It came from the vent above his bed, just for a second. Then silence. He sat up, listened, waited. Nothing. He laughed at himself. Just an old building, he thought. Maybe a raccoon, or the wind. But that sound, it came back, night after night, always around the same time, 3 a.m., give or take. A faint scratching, then a long metallic scrape, like someone, or something, was pulling themselves through the ducts. He told himself it was harmless, until it spoke. It was the 7th night, a Friday, the kind where the cold felt thicker, like the air had weight. Elias had just turned off his laptop, clicked off the lamp, and laid in bed scrolling through mindless reels. That's when it started again. Scratch. Scratch. Then, a whisper. Not words. Just breath. Coming from inside the vent, directly above his bed. His thumb froze mid-scroll. He listened, waited. Nothing. He got up and climbed onto the bed, flashlight in hand, and shined it into the vent grill. Just dust, rust, and darkness. Still, he left the light on that night. The next morning he told his landlord. The man barely looked up from his newspaper. "Oh yeah," he muttered. "Previous guy said something similar. Could be an old raccoon. Ductwork's a mess in that house, don't worry about it." That didn't sit right with Elias, so he taped an old burner phone, one with a cracked screen, up above his bed, aimed at the vent, hit record, left it running all night. He didn't sleep much, just stared at the blinking red light on the phone until his eyes finally gave out. In the morning, the recording was 3 hours long, mostly silence. But at 3:17 a.m., something changed. On screen, the vent grill shook, softly. Then, 2 screws slowly turned loose. Metal squeaked. And then, a hand, pale, thin, nails dark. It crept through the vent opening, paused, and retreated just as slowly. Elias watched the footage in silence, his stomach turning. The image was grainy, but one thing was clear. That was not a raccoon. He called the police. They showed up 2 hours later, bored, skeptical, until he showed them the video. That got their attention. 2 officers stood in his bedroom as Elias climbed onto the bed and unscrewed the vent. Behind it was just blackness, an air duct about 16 inches wide leading into the wall. One of the officers fetched a flashlight, knelt, peered inside, then frowned. "There's something back there," he said. He removed the duct plate and reached inside. A loud clang echoed through the walls. Then came a scraping, louder now, followed by silence. The other officer radioed for backup. When they finally pulled the furnace apart in the basement, they found something none of them expected. A narrow opening carved into the foundation. It led to a tunnel, dug by hand. Inside the tunnel was a sleeping bag, cans of food, empty water bottles, and a pile of discarded clothing. But no person, just claw marks, hundreds of them, along the vent shafts and walls. Whoever had been in there had been there for a long time. Elias moved out that week, left behind his deposit, his furniture, even his dishes. He didn't care. He stayed on a friend's couch until he found a new place in a newer building, one with clean ducts and central air. But even now, months later, he can't fall asleep without music playing, because in the silence, he swears he can still hear it. Not a voice, not a whisper. Just the sound of something dragging cold fingers through metal. Searching. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He just liked sleeping close, where he could hear me breathe. Have you ever taken a wrong turn and felt like you were being expected? Tell me in the comments, what's the most unsettling place you've ever accidentally ended up? Devin had delivered to every kind of house you could imagine. In his year working late-night grocery drop-offs, he'd seen hoarders, survivalists, and enough unlit porches to fuel 10 horror movies. But nothing ever stuck with him quite like 1450 Bellerose Lane, because according to Google Maps, it didn't exist. It was just after 9 p.m. on a rain-heavy Wednesday in mid-October. Devin was 3 deliveries away from clocking out. One of them, addressed to a Mrs. Albright, had a weird glitch on the app. No map pin, no listed city, just coordinates, and a name. He refreshed the page. Still there. He almost skipped it, until he saw the tip, $40, cash. Tempting enough to try. He tapped accept, and let the GPS guide him. The road turned from paved to gravel, then gravel to mud. Soon he was driving through pine forest, his cell signal blinking out as the rain turned from light taps to steady sheets. The street signs stopped, the houses thinned, and just as he was about to turn around, he saw it. A narrow wooden sign, nailed to a splintered post. Bellerose Lane, no outlet. It didn't feel like a street. It felt like a warning. He crept along slowly. The trees pressed closer. Branches dragged along the car roof like fingers. And then, just before the woods swallowed the road entirely, he saw a clearing. A single house stood at the dead end. 2 stories, gabled roof, the kind of place that looked like it had once been beautiful, but hadn't been touched in decades. The windows were dark, but the porch light was on. Devin parked. Rain hit the windshield like drum beats. He grabbed the paper grocery bag and stepped out, pulling his hoodie tight. As he climbed the porch steps, he noticed something strange. The welcome mat was clean. Too clean. The rest of the porch was soaked and filthy. But the mat looked brand new. He hesitated. Knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Louder. That's when the door creaked open. By itself. He stood there, heart picking up pace. The bag in his hands grew heavier. He called out, "Mrs. Albright?" Still no answer. He stepped inside just far enough to avoid the rain. The house smelled like mothballs and dust. But beneath it, something else. A sour, metallic undertone, like old blood in water. On the left, a hallway. On the right, a wall covered in photographs. Hundreds of them. Every frame black, hand-carved, dusty. Every photo was of the same person. Him, Devin, leaning against his car, walking through his local grocery store, laughing with friends at a gas station. Dozens of moments from the last year. Photos he never took. Photos he never even knew were taken. He backed away. The bag slipped from his hands. From behind him a voice, soft and close. "You always bring food, but you never stay to eat." He turned. There was a woman standing at the far end of the hall. Thin, barefoot, eyes too wide, mouth stretched in a smile that felt painted on. "Mrs. Albright?" He choked. She didn't answer, just tilted her head. "You're taller than I thought," she whispered. "I like that." Devin bolted, down the porch, through the rain, into his car. The engine stuttered, then roared to life. As he reversed, he glanced in the rearview mirror. She was still standing on the porch, but now, she was holding one of the photos. One of him. From tonight. Taken as he was getting out of the car. He drove for 15 minutes before his GPS came back. But Bellerose Lane didn't show up. No coordinates, no listing, no record. When he returned the next day with a friend, just to be sure, there was nothing but a field. No house, no porch, just damp grass, and 2 rotted fence posts. But nailed to one of them was a photo. Devon, standing on the porch, eyes wide, just before the door opened. He delivered to hundreds of homes, but only one of them was already his. When a room gives you a bad feeling, trust it, especially the ones that smell too clean, like someone scrubbed the wrong kind of mess. Nina had been looking forward to this trip for months, a writing retreat, her first in years. No distractions, no emails, no obligations, just a quiet cabin in the Alberta foothills, booked for 10 days of solitude, with forest on all sides, and time to finally finish her second novel. She was 29, burnt out from agency work and city noise. So when the cabin listing showed up in a friend's newsletter, lake access, newly renovated, no neighbors for miles, it felt like the universe had whispered, "This is your turn." She booked it, packed light, drove through golden larch trees and mist-soaked roads until the highway disappeared into gravel. Then gravel into forest. The cabin stood alone, modest, square, clean. Big wraparound porch, pale wood siding, and 2 bedrooms, one for her, one labeled guest. The first night everything felt right. The air was crisp. The lake shimmered just beyond the trees. She made tea, lit candles, and wrote 3 solid pages before curling up under a thick wool blanket. But even then, under the glow of amber lights, something was off. A smell, not strong, barely there, but persistent, chemical, not like detergent or bleach, more like ammonia, bitter, burned. It seemed strongest near the guest room. She chalked it up to cabin supplies. Maybe someone had overcleaned. Maybe a rodent died in the wall. Not worth worrying about. The second night she noticed the guest door was ajar. She remembered shutting it earlier. Not locking it, just keeping it closed. Now it was open just a few inches. Enough to see the edge of the bed frame. Nothing else. She stared at it longer than necessary, then pushed it closed again, telling herself she was being dramatic. The sound of the latch echoed too loudly. By the third night, she didn't want to go near the guest room at all. She stuck to the living room, wrote on the couch, slept with lights dimmed. But sometime around 3 a.m., a thump woke her. It wasn't loud, more like a soft knock against wood. Then another. She got up slowly, heart pacing harder than it should have been. The sound came again. From the guest room. She crept toward the door. It was open again, just like before, only this time wide enough to reveal the entire bed, a large wooden frame, tidy gray comforter, fluffy pillows, and beneath it, shadows, a thick darkness that didn't belong. She backed away, closed the door with a trembling hand, and returned to her bedroom, locking it behind her. The next morning, she found something on the porch, a dead bird. Its body was stiff, neck twisted, eyes wide open, laid perfectly at the threshold of the guest room's exterior door. She stared at it, then opened the guest room, just to check. Nothing inside, but the smell was stronger now, pungent, artificial, almost masking something older, something spoiled. Night 4, she heard breathing, not her own, and not close. Faint, muffled, like someone trying not to be heard. But it was there. She turned off the TV, held her breath. The sound came again. A quiet exhale, from behind the guest room wall. She stood frozen in the living room, every instinct screaming not to open that door. But her legs moved anyway. She turned the knob. Inside, the smell hit her so hard she gagged. That bitter, sterile stench. Burned plastic and copper. She turned on the light. The room looked untouched, like no one had entered it in years. But under the bedskirt, she saw it. A glint. She dropped to her knees and lifted the fabric. 2 eyes stared back, wide, pale, and motionless. For a second she thought it was a mask, a doll, a trick. Then the head moved, just slightly, in the shadows. like whoever was under the bed had been lying there for hours, waiting. She screamed. The thing moved again, faster this time, scuttling deeper beneath the frame. Nina ran, out of the room, down the hallway, through the front door into the night. She didn't stop for shoes, didn't grab her phone. She just ran through the pine-needled forest until she hit gravel, then road, then a distant neighbor's house with a porch light. Police arrived an hour later. They found Nina shaking, barefoot, incoherent. She kept saying, "He was under the bed. He was waiting." They returned to the cabin, but it was empty. No signs of forced entry, nothing stolen, except for one thing. The guest bed frame had been moved slightly, skewed off-center. Underneath it, a journal, dozens of pages, each one written in tiny, careful print. Not in Nina's handwriting, but about her. She wakes at 7:32 a.m., toasts rye bread, 2 slices. She does not check under the bed. Page after page chronicled her every move, from the moment she arrived to the moment she ran, as if someone had been watching her from beneath the bed all along. He didn't want to hurt her. He just wanted to be part of her story. Some places are built to last. Brick by brick, timber by timber. They're held together for decades, sometimes centuries, by hands no longer remembered. These places outlive their owners. They outlive their purpose, but not always their memories. In the spring of 2012, Mark and Lisa Brennan purchased a farmhouse in rural Vermont. A real one. Not renovated, not flipped, not upgraded. Just old. Original. A red brick 4-bedroom colonial built in 1807. It sat on 6 acres of forested land just outside the town of East Haven. The place had no electricity when they toured it, no cell reception, no record of renovations, and, oddly, no recent sales history. They didn't see it as a red flag. They saw it as untouched. They made the purchase in cash, signed a 6-page deed, and moved in with their 10-year-old son, Ethan, and their dog Bo. They were looking for peace. They were told to expect quiet. They weren't told what lived beneath the floor. Mark had just stepped back from his tech firm, not retired exactly, just finished. He wanted time to read, fix things, slow down. Lisa, a visual artist, hadn't painted in nearly 2 years. The city had worn her down. Galleries, deadlines, people, the quiet excited her. She was ready for it. Ethan had been struggling in school. Social anxiety, they said. Lisa called it sensitivity. Mark called it overexposure. He needed stillness. This place offered stillness. The farmhouse hadn't been lived in for over 30 years. The bank handling the sale didn't have much to say about why. The agent who showed it didn't mention it at all. He was a young guy, talked more about insulation codes than history. What the Brennans noticed was the light, how it came through the kitchen in the morning, slanting across the floorboards, that the house had a personality, a heaviness maybe, but not unwelcome, not yet. The first few days were productive. Mark cleared brush from the overgrown barn path. Lisa began scraping old wallpaper in the dining room. Ethan spent his time climbing trees behind the property, dragging mossy sticks into piles he called nests. The house was drafty but not uncomfortable. The rooms stayed cooler than expected, even when the sun hit the west-facing windows. Bo, their retriever, slept curled by the front door every night, as if keeping watch. The family moved into the house in early April. By mid-May, they were fully unpacked. Lisa had a studio space set up in the attic. Mark was halfway through restoring the porch. Ethan was sleeping soundly. And then things started moving. Small things at first. A flashlight left on the kitchen table would be found on the porch the next morning. A door Lisa knew she'd locked was ajar at dawn. A tin measuring cup rolled slowly across the counter and fell on a flat surface. They laughed it off, blamed Bo, blamed each other, blamed sleep, until Lisa found the drawing. Ethan's sketchbook sat open in the studio. The page was full of tight spirals overlapping. In the center, a figure, thin, tall, with no face. Beneath it, written in Ethan's handwriting, "It comes up when we sleep." That night, Lisa woke to a sound. 3 distinct knocks, not at the door, not on the wall, from the floor, underneath them. She didn't wake Mark. She listened. It repeated once, then stopped. The next morning, she asked if he'd heard anything. Mark shook his head. Ethan, eating cereal, said plainly, "It knocks when it wants me to listen." The following week, Lisa found something beneath a loose floorboard. She was dusting the living room. One plank clicked differently. She pried it up. Beneath it, markings carved into the subfloor. Rough, imprecise, but deliberate. Circles inside circles. Diagonal crosses. What looked like open eyes. She took a photo and sent it to an old art colleague in Boston. The reply came 2 hours later. "Where did you find this? These aren't decorative, they're ritual, send more." Lisa didn't reply. She closed the floorboard. Didn't tell Mark. Didn't sleep that night. The basement began to change, not physically, but in presence, in temperature. It felt colder. Bo would sit at the top of the stairs and growl, never barked, just growled, low, constant, focused. Mark checked for drafts, gas leaks, dead animals. Nothing. Just a scent he couldn't place. Damp earth, burnt wax, a metallic edge like an old coin pressed against the tongue. He changed the light bulb 4 times in 2 weeks. Each one flickered, burned out, or cracked. By the end of May, the family stopped using the basement. Lisa started keeping the door locked. Lisa went to the local library. The Whitmore property, she learned, had a short, strange history. Built in 1807 by Elias Whitmore. Occupied continuously for nearly 80 years. Then in 1894, a sheriff visited on a welfare call after reports of screaming. He found the home empty. But neighbors said they still saw someone inside. Weeks later, movement. Candlelight. The records end with a single sentence. No body found. Property transferred to town under presumption of death. On June 18th, a thunderstorm rolled in. The power went out around 11:40 p.m. Mark went to check the fuse box. In the far corner of the basement, he noticed the rug had moved. Under it, a seam in the wood. He pulled it open. A trapdoor, a ladder, dirt below, a room. The ladder descended 10 feet. It wasn't part of the original house. The walls were packed dirt. The ceiling low, a crawl space, but hand dug. Mark crouched, sweeping the flashlight in slow arcs. The beam caught broken jars, scraps of old cloth, shards of porcelain, and something else. At the center of the room was a circle maybe 4 feet wide, made from string, ash, and bone. He saw the melted remnants of candles, wax fused into dirt. Small bones, animal, he hoped, arranged with precision. A child's shoe collapsed from time rested just outside the ring, and on the wall, photos, dozens of them. Most were old, Victorian, sepia-toned, people staring directly into the lens, unsmiling. But one was new, bright white border, clean, a Polaroid. Lisa, Mark, Ethan, and Bo, on the front porch. They hadn't posed for it, they hadn't taken it, but there they were, smiling. On the back, written in faded blue ink, April 2nd, welcome home. Mark stood still for nearly a minute, just breathing. And then upstairs, a crash. He ran. The basement steps took 2 at a time. The flashlight clattered to the floor behind him. The living room was wrecked. The couch flipped. Books scattered. Lisa crying, breathless, shaking. He was standing right next to me. I turned, and he was gone. Ethan. They tore through the house. Each room, closet, under the bed, behind curtains, nothing. Until Bo started barking. Upstairs. The hallway closet door was shut tight. Lisa opened it. Inside, Ethan, curled into a ball, face pressed into the corner. He was whispering, soft, repeating, "It's in the walls, it's in the walls, it's in the walls." That night they slept in the car. In the morning they drove into town and booked a hotel. They didn't pack. They didn't call a moving company. They never went back. The house went back on the market 6 months later. There were no offers. Lisa stopped painting. Ethan stopped speaking to anyone outside the family. Mark, quietly, researched paranormal investigators, never contacted them. They refused to talk to reporters, but one neighbor gave a statement. They looked like they aged 10 years and 10 weeks, especially the boy. He just stared. In 2019, the town received a complaint. Teens were breaking into the Whitmore house at night. No property damage, but strange reports. People claimed to see candlelight in the upstairs window, shadows in rooms that had no curtains. One teen, anonymously, told a podcaster, "We went in for a dare. It was freezing, and there was a picture on the floor, like someone had just taken it. It was the same Polaroid, the Brennans on the porch, but now, in the top left window of the house, behind them, a new shape. Too tall to be Ethan, too thin to be Mark, no face, just the outline, pressed close to the glass. The police report logged the finding, but the house was sealed again, boarded, condemned. The trapdoor remains under the floor, covered now, but still there. The markings have never been translated. No one has identified the symbol found beneath the living room tile. No record of Elias Whitmore's burial exists, and no one ever located a death certificate for Margaret Whitmore, or the baby. The house has been sold, once, since the Brennans left. The buyer lasted 48 hours. A local historian, who requested anonymity, reviewed the journal pages left behind the fireplace, 6 pages total, burned edges, written in different hands. The final entry, undated, read, "It woke up when I pulled the board loose. I thought it had stopped listening. I was wrong. It remembers. It's in the walls. It knows our names." In certain old homes, history isn't just remembered. It's performed, replayed, lived, over and over, without end, unless something interrupts it, unless someone opens the wrong door or the wrong floorboard. No one has slept inside the Whitmore house since 2012, but it's still there, the property line still intact, the walls still standing. And late at night, if you walk the tree line, some locals say you can still hear it. That slow pattern, 3 knocks, then 2. There's a kind of stillness some places carry. Not peace. Stillness. Like a held breath. The Whitmore farmhouse sits silent now. Boarded, overgrown, choked in vines that wrap themselves across the broken porch like ropes. But silence is not the same as emptiness. In 2020, a drone operator, contracted by the county for environmental records, filmed a 5-minute aerial pass over the Whitmore land. He later reviewed the footage frame by frame. At minute 2, in the top window of the attic, a curtain appears to part. No one was inside. The structure has no working electricity, no insulation, and officially, no interior furnishings. But something moved. Something watched him fly past. Locals don't talk about the house often, but when they do, it's with one shared phrase. That house doesn't forget its people. Some say they remember hearing strange stories even before the Brennans. In 1974, a high schooler named Daniel Meyer broke into the house on Halloween. He left a note on his friend's car, "Meet me in the floor." He was never seen again. The only thing found in the house was his backpack, unzipped, sitting beside the fireplace. Inside it, a sketch pad. With drawings nearly identical to Ethan Brennan's, eyes, walls, words etched in spiral patterns. Listen through the wood. Years later, Ethan began therapy again. This time, with a trauma specialist in upstate New York. He didn't talk for the first 2 sessions. In the third, he handed the therapist a notebook. On the inside cover, he had written, "If I say it out loud, it comes back." The notebook described what he remembered, not just the night in the closet, but the nights before, the whispers, the dreams, and the faces behind the walls. He wrote, "It doesn't live under the house lives on top of it." Some theorists believe the symbols Lisa found predate the house, that Elias Whitmore didn't create them. He uncovered them, that what lived beneath the home wasn't supernatural in the traditional sense, but parasitic. An intelligence, non-human, capable of listening, remembering, recreating. The carvings in the subfloor were later identified as incomplete containment sigils, variants traced to 17th century colonial texts. One occultist, reviewing Lisa's photos, wrote anonymously, "This wasn't built to summon, it was built to suppress. The house is a lid. You lifted it." The theory goes deeper, that the entity beneath the house doesn't destroy, it reclaims. It studies, learns patterns, takes shapes. Ethan described dreams where he saw his parents walking the halls, but slightly wrong. Too tall. Eyes not blinking, mouths moving in reverse. They spoke in words he didn't recognize but understood instinctively. "You were always ours." It's unclear whether Ethan still dreams of the house. He has since moved to Oregon. He doesn't do interviews, but a neighbor reported seeing him burning books in a steel barrel in the backyard. When asked, he replied, "There are things that speak through paper. Some houses are bought, others are claimed. The Whitmore property was never haunted. It was inhabited, and maybe always will be, just underfoot. Some doors are meant to stay closed, others we build over. But nothing buried is ever truly silent." For more stories, like, comment, share, and subscribe. In September 2019, a woman named Elena Ruiz signed a lease for a basement apartment in Seattle. She was 26, no roommates, no pets, freelance editor, moved from Sacramento, quiet life, no drama, no records. She paid first and last month's rent in cash. The landlord met her in a Starbucks parking lot. The lease was 1 page long. He told her, "The last tenant left fast, couldn't handle the quiet." She signed anyway. The listing had gone up at 11:38 p.m. 3 blurry photos, concrete floor, metal bed frame, a fluorescent lamp bolted to the ceiling. One odd detail, the mirror, full length, 8 feet tall, mounted to the far wall, framed in riveted steel, bolted top and bottom. No explanation. Elena joked in a message to her friend, "Guess I'll finally know what I look like when I die of boredom." She moved in on a Sunday. recorded everything, habit from living alone. She posted clips to her stories, showed off the size, the oddity of no windows, the weird smell, like wet plastic and dust. She stopped when she got to the mirror. Her phone paused, frozen for almost 5 seconds. When it resumed, her voice was quieter, uneasy. "This thing's cold, like colder than the wall." She tapped the mirror. The sound didn't bounce, it landed, like knocking on a box. For the first week, everything was fine. Mostly. The unit had no kitchen. She cooked in a toaster oven, washed dishes in the bathtub. Typical low-rent life. She worked at night, slept during the day, but by the 6th night, she started to feel it. The mirror, not watching, waiting. At 2:17 a.m., her phone lit up on its own, recording mode active. No audio, just video. It captured her, asleep, and a faint shift in lighting, like a screen flickering behind the mirror. The video cut after 23 seconds. She didn't notice it until days later. On the 12th night, she heard it. A knock, not from the door, not from above, from inside the wall, just behind the mirror. 3 sharp taps, a pause, 2 more. The next night, it repeated. Same time, 2:41 a.m., same pattern. She recorded it, but the sound didn't play back. Just silence, and a strange electrical tone, too low to hear consciously. She messaged the landlord. No answer. Texted 2 friends. No replies. She posted a clip. The video failed to upload. The caption, "What if it's not a mirror?" She did a test. Taped a flashlight directly to the glass. Turned off all other lights. Instead of reflecting, the beam vanished, like it passed through. A mirror should bounce light. This absorbed it. She backed away, filmed again. No flicker, no light. Just her own faint reflection, and something behind her that didn't move when she did. She placed a GoPro in the corner, facing the mirror, recording all night. In the footage, nothing happens until 3:12 a.m. Then, a shift. A figure moves behind the glass, sits in the chair, a chair she's never seen. Just on the other side of the glass, it sits motionless, head tilted, watching, not blinking. After 47 minutes, it leans forward, reaches toward the glass. The footage cuts. The closet was shallow, bare drywall, old paint. She'd hung jackets and left it alone. Until that morning, when she smelled something sharp, like burning plastic. She opened the door. Inside, behind a row of coats, were scratches. Fingernail depth, angled upward, repeating along the back panel, and a word, carved slowly, in uppercase. "Lease never ends." She laughed, but not convincingly. She started keeping the mirror covered, a black sheet, masking tape. But every morning, it was pulled halfway down. She began recording everything. Voice memos, ambient clips, watching waveforms. Sometimes she caught her own breathing, her footsteps, street noise. Other times, she caught nothing. But when she played the silence back, her dog, visiting for one night, growled at the speaker, then vomited and hid behind the couch. She sent the clip to a sound tech friend. He boosted the signal. Under the silence was her name. Looped, reversed, spoken by a voice too low and too dry to be human. She covered the mirror again, but the feeling didn't go away, that it wasn't a two-way glass, that it was a door, and she wasn't the one looking through it. On October 3rd, Elena woke to find the mirror uncovered again. The black sheet she'd taped over it was crumpled at her feet. She checked her phone. No new recordings. The GoPro battery was dead. Its SD card, empty. She hadn't turned it off. That was the night she wrote her first note on the wall. In red marker. Don't forget. It moved. By the end of the week, there were 6. Her friends began noticing the change. She stopped replying to messages, stopped posting online. She left a voicemail for her mother that simply said, "Don't come visit." Please." She taped over her laptop camera, turned her phone screen inward when she slept. She unplugged the Wi-Fi router at night. But the tapping didn't stop. 3 knocks. Pause. 2 more. Every night. Always at 2:41 a.m. Elena started drawing again. Something she hadn't done since she was a teenager. But these weren't sketches. They were warnings. Her art was full of faces, smeared, gray, mouthless, hands against glass, eyes where they didn't belong, behind furniture, inside closets, staring from the reflection in blacked-out screens. She drew one image over and over. A room. Small. No doors. Just a mirror on one wall. And a chair. Facing it. She tried to contact the landlord, but the number disconnected. The email bounced. The address listed on the lease was a mailbox inside a UPS store. When she called, the clerk said, "That box has been closed for over 6 months." That's when she searched the property records. The name listed, H. Greaves, didn't exist. Not in city records, not in county tax rolls, not even as a ghost LLC. When she called the property office, the clerk said, "That unit isn't zoned for residential rental. We don't even have a record of that basement being finished." She searched further. Finally, she found something. A tenant complaint filed in 2018 by a man named Noah Tran. Same unit, same square footage, same rent. The file was 1 paragraph. Tenant reports unusual structural issue, believes neighboring room may not be unoccupied. Request to be moved, lease terminated early. He didn't sue, didn't file formal damage claims, just left. But on a forgotten Reddit thread, she found a post under the name Echo Light 47. "If anyone's ever lived in a basement on 52nd and Warner, do not look behind the mirror." That post had one reply, from the same user, just 2 words, "It follows." She couldn't sleep. She began tearing the closet apart, piece by piece. Behind the shelves, she found another layer of drywall, thin, newer. Behind that, wooden boards, warped, stained, a gap the size of a fist let through faint light. She held her phone flashlight to it. What she saw was a wall, another one, parallel, 6 feet away, and between them, a narrow space. Carved into the drywall in jagged marker were 4 words. "The room is reading." She slid her phone through the gap, hit record, turned on the light. For 3 minutes the phone filmed nothing but stillness. Dust, cobwebs, dark, then movement. A slow pan. The camera shifted. On its own. A chair appeared in the frame. And then, someone sitting in it. She filmed herself that night. 2:31 a.m., facing the mirror, her voice low, barely audible. "It's on both sides now. I can feel it breathing when I speak." She sets the phone down, sits on the bed, waits. Then, the sheet over the mirror lifts. Not pulled, not blown, lifted. And underneath, not her reflection, but her, standing, watching, from the other side. The real Elena stands up, but the one in the mirror doesn't move. Then the lights go out. Her phone was found the next morning, face down, cracked, still recording. Police were called after the upstairs neighbor noticed the front door left open for hours. Inside, nothing appeared stolen, no forced entry. The mirror was gone, not removed, not shattered, gone. The wall behind it was bare, smooth, fresh paint covered where the bolts had been. Except, the Brenners hadn't repainted. There was no brush, no tray, no paint, just a wall, like nothing had ever been mounted. Elena wasn't missing. She left on her own, according to building security footage. 3:48 a.m. She walked out, barefoot, no bag, no phone, no ID. She was last seen 11 hours later in a Greyhound station 67 miles east. She bought a one-way ticket in cash. Destination, Flagstaff, Arizona. For years, she moved often, never stayed in one place more than 3 months. In 2022, she surfaced in a mental health report after checking herself into a sleep study center. Her complaint, persistent nightmares, Content, always the same. A room with no door, a chair facing a mirror. When asked if she recognized the mirror, she said, "It's always the same one, even in different rooms. Sometimes it's the only thing that follows." In 2023, a freelance researcher obtained documents tied to the original building. The unit Elena lived in, listed as Subunit B, did not appear on the building's official blueprints. No basement on file, no inspections ever logged, no zoning. When the building was re-evaluated for code compliance, they found no door matching Elena's apartment. The walls had been sealed. There was no access to the basement. In a box marked unassigned claims, they found a set of images, old Polaroids, tenant photos, unsigned, undated. Among them, a photo of Elena, taken from across the room. She's staring into a mirror, but in the reflection, she's facing the camera. The room, if you trace it back, was part of a Cold War development plan. Underground testing chambers, soundproof, lightproof, controlled. Used for psychological experiments, sensory deprivation, reflections, memory pattern tests. One experiment, never completed, was referred to in documents as Re-47, self-reflection fragmentation. The project was terminated in 1963 after 3 subjects were institutionalized. The remaining 2, never identified. The only note left: when the subject sees themselves too long, something else starts looking back. Today, the building stands renovated, modern, high occupancy. The basement is now listed as a private utility corridor, but contractors refuse to work there after dark. Some say you can hear tapping, others, whispers, but only if you're quiet enough to let it hear you first. Side-by-side images of the photo of the Brennans on the porch, the blurred still of Elena staring into the mirror. In both, a figure stands behind glass. They say your lease ends when you move out, but sometimes the lease ends when the room is done with you. Do you have similar experiences and would love to share? Drop a comment. I'd like to read from you. For more stories like this, like, comment, share, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe. If even one of these stories made you hesitate before opening a door, you're not the only one. Which story haunted you the most? Drop it in the comments. I'm still reading. And if you have a terrifying story of your own, a moment when the air changed, when you felt watched, or when you knew someone else was in the room, send it to us. Your nightmare could be the next story we tell. Like, comment, subscribe for more real horror every week. And turn on the lights if you haven't already, because some stories don't end, they just wait for someone new to listen.